Hi, I've got with me here today 4 iconic wines from Guigal in the Northern Rhone. I have the 2020 Condrieu, the La Malines, La Turque and La Landon. These from the 2018 vintage, which is current, and the 2020, which is also current. And it's a cool thing to look at these wines so young. I mean, I rarely do. These are usually drunk as older wines, and today we're going to taste through them and we're going to find out why that is. So to go through these wines, we've got the 2020 La Doriane, which is the Viognier from Condrieu. So Condrieu is up in the north, just south of Côte-Rôtie. And this wine's made like an Australian Chardonnay, really. I mean, it's 100% Malo, matured for 12 months in French oak, 100% new. And it really is this wonderful expression of Viognier. So what you get when you drink Viognier is apricots, green apples, spring florals. You should get this really kind of round, soft, slippery sort of texture, almost oily, and sometimes fat even. But this wine is tighter than that. It's full-bodied, it's like 14.5%. So that gives it a bit of a kick through the finish, which also helps to tighten up some of that fruit. And it's just a wonderful, vibrant wine of energy and line and length. And it's an important one to look at because we're looking here now at 2 of these 3 wines having a significant proportion of Viognier planted in the vineyards and therefore in the wines. So before we talk about these wines and what makes them so iconic, let's discuss for a little minute the things that make them the same. So these are 3 single vineyard wines from the Côte-Rôtie, which as mentioned is in the Northern Rhone, just north of Condrieu, which is this Viognier region, and south of Lyon. If you've ever been to Lyon, the beautiful city of Lyon, it's south of that. So these are all fermented in French oak for 42 months. Now the oak is a story in itself because the family sources, makes and dry ages these barrels. They make up to 700 a year for their own use. So they can really control every aspect of that oak regime. So the 42 months in oak that they make themselves from single vineyards that they own, and all of the ferments are wild ferments. So what you see here is this really kind of wonderful expression of site and producer, because we're looking at these are heavily made wines. I mean, these are not simple wines. These are complex and age-worthy. So a really interesting starting point. So we'll start with the La Malines. So the La Malines, you can see the amphitheatre type shaped vineyard, which is a series of Roman terraces, and it's a really special place. I mean, it's a sun trap. It's warmer than other parts of the Côte-Rôtie, often a degree or 2 degrees warmer than other areas. And on the website, I don't know if you've seen this, but it says that this wine is 89% Syrah, 11% Viognier. What that figure actually relates to, which I find very interesting indeed, is the vineyard split of plantings. So they are 89% Syrah vines and 11% Viognier vines. And the fruit is picked when the Syrah is ready with no consideration given to the Viognier, and all picked at the same time and fermented at the same time. So we have this true co-ferment character. So the resultant Viognier infusion in this wine is somewhere between 5 and 8%, despite there being 11% vines in that vineyard. So this is 0% whole bunch. And the vineyard is small. It's less than a hectare and over 100 years old. So while they do replace some vines as required, the vineyard's an old one. And that makes it quite special in my mind. So on the nose, this is the prettiest and the most aromatic of the 3, actually. It's planted on schist, which is a lighter soil, really good for Viognier, but what it gives us is a prettiness in this wine, despite the oak, because these are quite oaky. I mean, they are oaky wines, and I'm used to drinking them as older wines because that oak in its youth now is quite prohibitive, and it is. But nothing can hide that fruit, and it's pretty wild that I can say things like pretty and powerful, detailed and robust, like muscular and focused. It's all of these things all together, which is, I think, how we know that we're in the presence of a very special thing. We usually see these wines as quite old wines, as I say, and for me, all I'm getting when I taste this wine is memories of the wines that I've had that have been old, and I really believe that we should be drinking them as a little bit older. So moving into the second wine, we have La Turque. So this has got up to 50% whole bunch in the wine, as opposed to very little /0. And this is planted on slate. It's much darker soils, and the vineyard is like on the knoll of the top of the hill, which means it's really exposed to sun, wind, rain, the whole bit. But what it does get is the first glimpse of sunshine as it comes up over the Alps in the morning, and the last glimmer of it as it goes down in the afternoon, making it a really powerful sun sight. And sun is the superpower of this wine, because what you get is the power and the density from this dark earth, but you get this energy and vitality from the sun. So the vineyard was replanted in 1981, and there's no terraces in this area. It's contiguous rows, long, even ripening, really, really even. There's no parcels that come in before any others. It's all at once. It's so good. I mean, in terms of approachability, I would put this wine ahead of this wine. Something about maybe it's the sun, I'm not sure, but something about the Syrah here has just soaked up that oak so much better, in my opinion. The vineyard split here is 93-7, so 93% Syrah vines, 7% Viognier vines. And the lower percentage of Viognier in this wine has really made for something that's, I don't know, it's powerful, but it's super balanced. I mean, this is probably the one that I find the most pleasurable to drink. As I was tasting them before I started the video, I really thought that this was definitely my pick of the wines. So it's probably around 4 to 6% Viognier all told, and 50% whole bunch, as I said. So a really special wine. And if you'd given me the vineyard information and said, which do you think you're going to like most, I definitely would have said L'Armeline. I would have said I would have had a new world attraction to the 100% whole bunch in this wine, but actually it's just the power and the balance of La Turque that's got me going. Anyway, moving into wine number 4. This is a 2018 La Landonne. So this is 100% Syrah, 100% whole bunch, as the others are matured in 42 months, French oak. Apparently they're a bit bigger than Bordeaux barrels and thicker staved, just if you're interested in oak. So what we have here is very interesting. They've got mechanical hoofs that do the punch down, the pigeage. So you can do that with any kind of implement that will push down the cap into the juice, and then it rises to the top again. And that really kind of works the tannins into the juice. But this has some mechanical feet that do that for them. And this wine here is spraying of the cap. So what they do is they pull juice out from just underneath the cap, spray it on top of the cap, and the whole thing is just this very gentle kind of submerging process. So this vineyard is, sorry, I got excited then. I'm just trying to explain this to you. It goes on a 45-degree angle down from the hill into the widest part of the Rhine River, effectively. And 45 degrees, if you can just think about that for a second, that's wild. It's east-facing, really long ripening, and I think, like, if we step out of Rhone and we step out of these wines and we just talk about Syrah and whole bunch can really lock up a wine. What it does is it gives you aromatic complexity, spice. It adds textural complexity. The tannins get more of a 3D character when you include whole bunches in the ferment. But what it can do as drinkers, it can close the wine up. So if you have a wine with a high proportion of whole bunch, like this wine at 100%, I would absolutely recommend that you try and crack that cage open, and you do that by either decanting or getting it in the glass and moving it around. Now, as I said to you, when I looked at these wines initially, I had thought that I'd be attracted to the prettiness here and the bunchiness here, but actually the bunchiness is really quite pronounced, and I really did need to give it a fair bit of agitation to get that to open up, which it absolutely now has. So that has a real kind of iron oxide, meat rind, roast character. It's kind of gritty and good, and I think super powerful in terms of longevity. This will be here long after the others, and I sort of like the austerity of that wine. And in terms of drinking windows, like when do we drink these? Well, usually it's been with the generosity of somebody else. And I've looked at these wines as 10, 20, 30-year-old wines, and they just become finer and more ethereal and more beautiful and more spiced and softer as they become older. The oak is still a feature. I mean, you can't make a wine early, like this much oak, and say that the oak is going to absorb and be invisible at the end of its lifetime. It does not work like that. You will still see the oak at the end of its life, but it's whether or not you like that character. And in this context, I love that character. It works out beautifully. So, I mean, this is an incredible release. 2018 was a very good vintage, and one of those awful vintages that taste good on release. They're problematic because they never get aged as well as they should do. In terms of the pick for me, as they open, my assessments evolve. It's got real licorice character evolving now, like really kind of spicy and exotic. Oh, you know, I think for me it might be this. Even though I said it was this, I think it might be the Landon just by a squish. So anyhow, amazing wines. If you haven't tried them, I'd really recommend that you try an older one first to understand the beauty of them and then come back to some younger ones. The oak is a big deal, but the fruit is so super powerful, and these wines are wines of sight, and that we should look at them just exactly like that. It's a beautiful thing. Anyway, God love Shiraz.